European Atlantis. We start out with an example. Some call Doggerland Atlantis. Most do not agree at all, or are not aware at all with this marginal hypothesis. We propose it was part of Atlantis, and we also will bring up some arguments to support this. Most if not all megaliths are found on the west coast of Doggerland, the one coast exposed to the Americas. Stonehenge monument comes from Wales. There could be several reasons for this movement. Or the part of Wales where the stones were was threatened to become underwater because of the rising ocean levels. As a reference, already 70 meters 12,000 years ago, and they had to move it anyway. Maybe it came from somewhere further west and or more lowland already, or it had just another function before. There are stone circles that never were, a few or a minority, at the coast like Evora in Portugal, that is 340 meters above sea level. The preference for this west coast does not make a lot of sense. It must have known rougher weather, unless the ocean to the left was much more important than the sea to the north, the riverbanks of a very wide river, and all of the inland. This here called inland stretches much more south and warmer. That is if there was not a very warming Gulf Stream. The same question for why did the Bell-Beaker culture, as well as the builders of Carnac, choose the west facades, which today are less developed than most other parts of France, and present a less attractive climate compared to the Mediterranean etc. The whole world exposed to the Americas was Atlantis. The whole world was Atlantis, certainly the facades and parts exposed to the Americas. Expansion routes like the Austronesian Expansion going west as far as Madagascar and Africa. Much if not all of the oldest found modern humans, and earlier Homo erectus are found on what is exposed to the out of the Americas expansion routes. Korea presents a lot of megalithic structures like dolmen, as do islands in Indonesia, like Java, as well as the whole of Southeast Asia. Because the former global civilization, the mysterious supposed lost advanced civilization, or the soon-to-disappear civilization was global. Out of the Americas, but that does not matter here. Because the whole world sinks, floods 120 meters somewhere between 12,000 and 5,000 years ago, simply because all oceans rose this much. The areas of the world that were not considered Atlantis were the areas where they now massively moved to, while executing the until recently unknown. Ancient DNA research, massive population turnover events. Detected mainly recently and by means of ancient DNA amongst others by the team of geneticist David Reich. In other words, modern Europeans etc. are not the descendants of an out of Africa, and even less one that interbred with Neanderthals. If their ancestors had been out of Africans, independent if they interbred with Neanderthal or not, they would have been extinct before the end of these population turnover events that ended around 4,500 years ago. The supposed Neanderthal fraction all non-sub-Saharan modern humans carry is from late Atlantis humans. What is left of them carries Y DNA haplogroup R. The actual native Amerindians carry the prehistoric Y DNA haplogroup R1, they and other Atlantoids, out of Americans. Amongst many others 60% of modern Europeans carry modern R1b and R1a. All native Europeans from before the worldwide flood, eventually presenting local tsunamis, would have their populations turned over and or replaced by the arriving Atlantoids, carrying native Amerindian DNA. If there had been out of Africans or out of Africans with Neanderthal DNA supposedly achieved by interbreeding. There were none like this, because this is related to a narrative invented by consensus to escape the out of the Americas and the out of Atlantoids, which is the same, this independent if they had acquired a Neanderthal fraction by means of interbreeding or not. All what is left of the out of North Americans was and still is loaded with this supposed Neanderthal fraction. Doggerland, also, sunken part of Atlantis. In other words, Doggerland, also, was Atlantis and sunk. So was Sunderland, Sol, Polynesians Island etc. What did not totally disappear shrunk and had to adapt, and move inland or to other places what they could. Possibly also the case of Stonehenge, Carnac etc. Bali in Indonesia, for sure had been an important place before its artifacts show quite some similarities with the Americas and Andes.